Welcome to the AlphaMind Podcast, hosted by Steven Goldstein and Mark Randall, where we take listeners through a journey on all aspects of the human elements of trading and risk-taking. We are delighted to be sponsored by the esteemed Society of Technical Analysts, the STA, a not-for-profit body which explores and educates people on all aspects of price action in the markets. We are also delighted to be promoting their brilliant home study course, which is based on their diploma program, which has been delivered at some of the world's top universities. You can find out about obtaining a discount on this home study course by going to our website, alpha-mind.net, and scrolling down to the section on the Society of Technical Analysts. There you will find all details about how you can obtain a discount on the price of this brilliant learning program. Now on with this week's podcast.
Welcome to this week's AlphaMind Podcast, and we're delighted to have Kim-Ann Curtin with us, all the way from Hawaii, known as the Wall Street Coach.
It's true.
Yeah, the Wall Street Coach is with us to delve into this world from various perspectives, and we're going to be very interested to see where this conversation goes. Certainly, Steve and I have talked about it on the quiet for quite a while, as terms of we need to get this type of dialogue out there. But I want to hand over to Kim now, just to give us a sense as to your journey so far, a little bit about you and where you currently are, and then I guess this sort of from your perspective, the Wall Street Coach. What, from your perspective, does that mean?
Well, the Wall Street Coach came about thanks to a reporter who interviewed me while I was coaching outside the stock exchange on a bench during the '08 crisis. So that was a very challenging time for obviously a lot of people in finance, but it was a challenging time for me because I had just walked away from the hedge fund that was very generous to me to start my own coaching practice. And a year and a half into that business, everybody stopped spending money because it was the, beginning of that '08 crisis. So a very good friend, as I tried to, get some temp work to pay the bills, because I felt coaching was my, mission. I wasn't going to give it up. He said to me, if you are dedicated to being coached, then you should go and give it away, even if you can't get clients. And I thought, well, where would it be best needed? And I thought, well, gosh, Wall Street's 10th on a good day, and it's not a good day right now. So I sat out there with a sign similar to Lucy that said the coach is in instead of the doctor is in. And I had a line of people, and I did that every week for a year. And a couple of weeks into it, a reporter saw me sitting there and people getting coached by me in 20-minute sessions. And he wrote an article about me, calling me the Wall Street Coach. And I thought, heck, that's an excellent name.
That's a major result to get so early on, right? Let's get a bit of marketing done. So that early journey, and so what did that mean? Was that you as just someone that became sort of someone of comfort? Were you comforting people? Did you feel that you were, what sort of purpose did you feel you were giving these people?
I think when, you're fired or laid off, right? Or you feel no longer comfortable or set in what has been your experience. I'll give the most, poignant example from that time. It was a trader who had been on the trading floor for, this is 2008, right? So he had been on the trading floor at that point 10, 14 years, and he had been let go of weeks before. And he was sitting to my right. I was, there was a couple of benches that are still out there on the corner of Broad Mall. And he was sitting next to me for a long time, and people had come and gone. And then I thought, maybe he doesn't want to have anybody see him sit next to me, right? So at some point I started a small chat with him, and then he said that he had been getting dressed every morning, taking the train into the city, even though he had been fired weeks before, because he was so embarrassed to tell his wife and his family's kids. And ultimately, he felt ashamed that he had this happen to him. And hopefully by the end of that, coaching, what I enrolled him, first I tried to find out, did he have a supportive wife? Did he have a supportive family? Because not everybody does. But once that was determined, I said, this is when they are to be there for you, but you've probably always been there for them. Now it's time for you to get their support. So I think at the end of the day, what does coaching do in any situation? It hopefully gives people, first of all, affirmation that their experience and their emotional reaction to it is valid, which in and of itself can sort of steady the earth somebody's on. And then also I find when people are truly listened to without you having an agenda for them, when you really listen to people, they are able to finally sort of hear themselves. And it's in that moment they can start to hear, wait, do I really believe that? So I feel it's a very empowering place to simply have a listener who's neutral. And that's what I think is the greatest gift coaches do for their clients. If they are good coaches, they are going to be able to hold that objective, neutral space that perhaps that person can't find anywhere else.
And it's curious, isn't it, that even if that person had a job within the corporate world, he probably still wouldn't have had someone that was there to discuss things, to share things with. We live and work in these structures, but we don't necessarily feel that we want to be vulnerable enough to actually ask for that support and that help. And so you allowed him to be vulnerable, I suppose, and to share, what I'm sure a lot of people have gone through, that sort of slightly embarrassing position of not wanting to tell someone that you've failed, in the sense of whatever failure means. Oh, well, good for you. And then that then flourished. You then started to get, I guess you started to build the way that you did your work and that you built skills to build that out.
I hired a coach. That's how it all began for me. I had hired a coach 2.5 years prior when I was in the C-suite level in finance. I was in finance for 10 years. But there was just this gnawing in my heart that as much as I liked what I did too, because it was a very strategic role. And I was certainly well compensated, certainly happy with the monetary side of it. I had, been very impacted by Joseph Campbell in my early, 20s, 19. I had seen The Power of Myth, listened to it over and over again. And he talked about finding your bliss. And as much as, I loved what I did, it wasn't my bliss. I knew that. And so I was sort of frustrated, thought, here I am one of the few who even know this concept of bliss exists, and yet I can't find it. What's the problem? And I think it was really after a personal development course I did Landmark Forum. It was life-changing for me. And it was after that I felt I'd heard about coaches. I had done a high ropes experience with coaches with a community Episcopal church in New York called St. Bartholomew's. And at a high ropes course, I met 2 executive coaches who had worked with C-suite level kind of, executives. And that was just a life-changing experience for me as well. And it was really the first session where I got kind of the lightning bolt to myself and was like, this is it. This is the bliss I've been looking for. And it was, that was 20 years ago. And I've not had one doubt since that this is what I was born to do. So here I am.
Wow. Kim-Ann, thank you for that, and welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on. There's so many questions that are coming up for me as I sort of process what you were saying. Where to start, really? It's really interesting. You talked about life-changing experiences, and So many people who have had coaching and sort of what I call this type of coaching, because there are quite a few different types of coaching, talk about how it changed and it transformed their life. It transformed my life when I had a coach. I worked with an executive coach 24 years ago, and it transformed my life to the sense that I became a very good trader after that. And I talk about this quite often, having struggled for 13 years as a professional trader, perhaps not really knowing myself, and like so many people, probably feeling that I was bluffing my way through to that point. But it changed me in so many other ways. It changed so much about how I approach life. And in fact, that particular coach ended up writing the foreword to my book.
That's right. I read your book. It's excellent. And I love that you were so vulnerable in your book, sharing what it did for you that not everybody would have done, Steven. So I really appreciated that you did that in yours.
Thank you. And in a way, that's what coaching is. It's a place for you to share your vulnerability. And in the trading world, you don't want to show your vulnerability.
Exactly.
It's probably the worst thing you can do.
Yep, absolutely true. So it's so counterintuitive asking people to come over here and be vulnerable when they're not really safe to be vulnerable anyplace else.
Yeah. And if you succeed anything, you have to engage with that vulnerability. And I still remember the day. I was lucky. I got very lucky with coaching, and I didn't know anything about it. We had a new boss at the company that I worked at who joined from another bank where he'd been in a leadership scheme with this coach.
Wow.
He was running for them. And he said, look, I want to try with this coach here. I want to see if I could bring him in to work with the traders. And Steve, would you, I was part of his team. And he said, would you be willing to be the guinea pig? Now, at that point, I was like, no way. And he thought approaching me, I'd probably be the most open to that. But to me, it was like, in front of my colleagues in a trading room.
Exactly.
Having a coach, although I didn't know what it was, it felt like,
Weakness.
Yeah, exactly. And I just said no. And I could see the disappointment in his face. And he came around and he talked to me and he said, look, I've worked with this guy. He's brilliant. He's changed my life. He's worked with lots of others. He's changed his life, their lives. Just give it a go. No, it will. I promise you, there is no cost to you. It's being paid for. Think about it. And then a week later, he came back to me and he said, have you thought about it? And I went, look, there's nothing to lose really. So I'm willing to go to it. That was, all that was 6 90-minute sessions with him over about 6 months, 6 90-minute conversations. And it changed my life. And Mark, me, you, we all meet people who we work with who will tell us we've changed their lives, which is a wonderful thing anyway. And in its own right, it feels better than anything. That's like the reward itself. To hear that.
I can't think of anything better, because at the end of the day, I would be curious to hear what you both think about this, but what it also has done for me is all of those challenges I have endured in my life, that that scar is there forever. When you see somebody be able to perhaps take what you have gone through, or a tool that now could change things for them, and they use it, it sort of also redeems previous pain and cost. For me personally, it's like, wow, maybe what I went through wasn't a waste, because it actually now is going to help somebody else have less pain, less cost.
Yeah. And I find it strange that this lack of vulnerability, and I think, Mark, you spoke about it in a post we did last week, that men in particular have this unwillingness to make themselves vulnerable. I don't know if I don't think women have the same challenge with it, although perhaps you can correct me on that.
I think women have different, kind of restrictive expectations placed upon them. But because men are so, culturally, regardless of US culture, Western culture in general, or British culture, maybe even more in Britain, is, I'm a huge fan of Geert Hofstede, who I might be saying his last name wrong. He is a gentleman who studied all the cultural dimensions, our relationship to speaking back to authority, so on and so forth. And he has 5 dimensions, and he talks about how each culture, kind of develops all of us. But one of the things that all of the cultures almost all have in common is this expectation of men to, there's a phrase in a movie that I send a lot of men to, a documentary called The Mask You Live In. And at the start of it, Joe Ehrman, a former football player, says the most terrible day for a young boy is the day that some man tells him to be a man. Because when a child is told that, a boy is told that, they're never taught what that means. And the culture is continuously telling them that what that means is to not show feeling and to not be vulnerable. And that is what sets them up in so many ways for exactly what you're speaking to. That discomfort with vulnerability, because the culture has taught them that means they're not a man anymore. They're not masculine. And that is like the most damaging thing you could ever think about yourself, I see, as a man.
It's really interesting because I've pulled up the page from my book where I first talk about this. And the heading for that page is "Being vulnerable means being willing to ask for help." And I talk about a scene from the TV series Billions, which of course is fictional, but it's a scene where the performance coach at the hedge fund, Bobby Axelrod's hedge fund, Wendy Rhodes, she's talking to an audience of hedge fund portfolio managers at a conference, and in that talk she tells them that in their minds, the thought that someone might know you need help is worse than not getting the help you need.
Exactly.
When I heard that line, and when I saw her say it in the show, I rewound it and played it again, and I rewound it and I played it again. And then I was thinking, how did the writers know that? Because that is so spot on. Okay. People are not just afraid to ask for help, they're afraid to be seen to ask for help.
To admit themselves, never mind anybody else, because that inner critic is, especially for men and especially in the testosterone-fueled world of Wall Street, it is all about the bravado. It's about, is it okay to curse on this podcast?
Yeah.
Is it okay to curse? This is the phrase that the big swinging dick, that if you are not seen as that on the floor, your whole reputation is going to go down the drain. And so in a lot of ways, I was so grateful that that show Billions put a big swinging dick in the position of having a coach, because I was just hoping perhaps now guys will see you can be strong, you can be incredibly this very confident man and still need a coach. I was like, that was just the best advertising for coaching ever, because it allowed them to see the strength isn't diminished by a coach, but perhaps increased.
So I'll throw in a question here. Excuse me. So how come sports accepted coaching before the corporate world accepted coaching? What was
much
the trigger? Because something happened in sports, but it didn't happen in parallel in the corporate world, not until, I guess, fairly recently, where people are starting to realize, hey, this might be useful.
Yep. I really think what's happening, especially in the finance world, which is the place I've been for so long, is they still believe that their cognitive activity is somehow under their control somehow. And as if they are, a different animal than an athlete, as if they're not still a human being. I don't think those in finance, they're such intellectuals, right? They're the smartest guys in any room. And so I think they have this fundamental disconnect between their head and their body, whereas an athlete can't but help to see that if they want their body to respond, they probably are going to need to have a coach, an external force looking at them and noticing things. But I think I know very smart, very successful people who still don't understand or appreciate that coaching could be beneficial. And it baffles my mind that they don't see that the body and the mind are still connected. And yet, it's very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, this is a bit of a dark thing to say, but even how men are meant to perform in a certain mold shown in movies and series. I mean, also, I think sets a parameter that sort of reinforces that, you better be strong, you can't be weak, you got to look like this. And that's not the same in sport. That's not happened in sport. Sport has just gone, well, we want to win, we want to get medals, we want to get results, we want to celebrate.
Correct.
But there's a lag. There's a lag somewhere in the corporate system that even to this day, the acceptance of the fact that you probably need it, but you don't want to take it because you kind of look a bit vulnerable, is very much where we are.
Yep.
And so, as we do coaching, we do workshops, whatever. To some extent, I mean, when I started doing, for example, mindfulness-based stuff within a large bank, I had to be very, very careful what I called it. Because if I called it mindfulness-based stuff, nobody would have turned up.
Totally.
So I thought, well, I have to call this like Mind Fit or something. So actually, how you wrap up this, I guess, this assistance, as it were, this help, this guidance, also becomes quite important. So that the person that's, doesn't know yet that they require your services, but after they see the, what the background is, that they said, okay, this sounds interesting. So I think positioning is very, very important. And alluding it to performance. And alluding it to edge, like, this is a world where you're all competing within these landscapes. Well, you want to be the sharpest version of yourself. You want to have the supreme edge.
That's right.
Well, okay, so if you're hearing that some of your other colleagues are accepting, a wise head as a coach comes along as let's find that edge. You're going to feel that you're losing out a little bit by not doing it. So, okay, so you're going to be accepting to the fact that we need this.
Exactly.
And I think that that's the skill. So I think it's out there, but it's how you position it, how you sell it. And it's almost a case of, well, if you don't do it, what's your performance going to be like?
Exactly. Well, I always ask, so what you have done, how's that going for you? How's it working for you? And that will force them to admit maybe not so great. And the phrase, or the kind of metaphor I put in front of them is, and hopefully, this helps them see themselves more powerfully, is I see them as Olympians, especially traders. You are an Olympian. You have to be coming into that as though you are going for the gold, because the smartest people in the world are who you are up against, and you are up against that market. So if you don't treat your body like an Olympian, you don't treat your mind like an Olympian. And if we look at what they do, it is usually quite different. And that's what traders especially, I don't think, realize. None of us would expect Michael Phelps to eat McDonald's before swim meet. And yet, so many traders don't prioritize their nutrition, don't prioritize their sleep, drink alcohol, have hangovers. They're expecting their mind to somehow, just through sheer willpower, to overtake all of the things that are physiologically happening for them, not to mention doubt or lack of confidence or inner critics, or just the things that happen to them when they're on a losing streak chemically or on a winning streak. So I say, think of yourself as an Olympian, and let's do all of the things that mimic what that Olympian has to do to be the best they can.
We will return to the podcast shortly after I have shared with you details of my new book, Mastering the Mental Game of Trading, which was published earlier this year. This book delves deep into the crucial realities and mental challenges that traders face in the game of trading. Many traders make the mistake of believing that analysis is the key to success in markets. However, if you don't have high-level abilities as a risk taker with a solid and robust risk process and a strong foundation in your knowledge of risk taking, then even the best analysis in the world will be of little use. Trading success hinges on a range of attributes which are required of yourself that are necessary for effectively managing risks, navigating market uncertainty, and making optimal decisions within that chaos. It is this battle with yourself, in yourself, and at the nexus of where you meet the markets that represents the key challenges every trader needs to overcome in order to succeed in this incredibly difficult game over time. Mastering the Mental Game of Trading aims to guide you through these challenges using unique frameworks, models, and theories drawn from my 25 years as a trader, enriched by the real narratives of others that I've encountered in my journey as a performance coach over the last 15 years. Mastering the Mental Game of Trading is available on Amazon, where it is currently rated 5 stars, and all good online book retailers. It can be bought in paperback, Kindle, and Audible, and is also available in Italian under the title Pensa come entrata. Now let's return to the podcast. So Kim-Ann, and I'm putting you to Mark, I'm putting this to you as well. This is the beauty of having a three-way call. Right. We know that coaching is incredibly powerful. Okay. We know it can change people's lives, career trajectories. It can do so much for them. Okay. But we also know how reluctant people are to engage with it, how difficult it is for them to break past a barrier or resistance they have to it and don't see the value of investing in it. How do you sell it? What is the sizzle? What is it that's going to make people go, that is what I need? I don't need another course in analysis. I don't need another course in risk management.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend X on getting the world's best research. Okay. Because that's not going to move the needle for me. Okay. I don't need to spend grillions on data that's 0.1 of a millisecond faster than everyone else. Okay. As much as I think that is the thing, that's not moving the needle. So how do you sell that? It is so obvious, and yet I know how hard it is to bring people into seeing that. I'm going to add something in a minute, but I'm not going to do it yet. But I'm going to just throw that out there to both you. Question to you, Mark, but first to you, Kim-Ann.
I sort of focus on what is going to continue to be your experience without mixing it up. So it isn't so much that I'll focus in that conversation about the power of coaching, but I'll ask them also, what are the costs that you'll continue to pay if nothing changes? if it stays exactly as it is right now, your life, your trading? What do you see happening in 6 months or a year if everything stays the way it is now? That sometimes causes enough fear and panic for them to consider that maybe they have to mix it up. And I don't quote Anya's Nin to them, but I do reference that quote she has, that when that staying small, staying in that bud becomes too painful, that is when we start to open. And, Peter Levine, Dr. Peter Levine, who wrote Waking Tiger, he talks about this like pendulation that happens, like you open up a little bit and then you close back up. And so hopefully in those initial conversations, I help people open up just a little bit. But even in that opening, there is some discomfort, there is some pain. So I think it's about seeing there is a long-term pain if nothing changes, but short-term small pockets of pain are going to actually move you, just like your muscle in a gym, to the strength that ultimately will give you what you need for the distance.
Wonderful. So you want my answer now? Well, the way I coach, I think it's all about edge. So I'll really share the thought with someone that I'll reveal to them that through the process, I will prove that they are living in a black and white mono world, and that through the exploration and the discussions, I will shift them into a world like in The Wizard of Oz, where suddenly the doors open and it's Technicolor, it's HDMI, it's stereo sound. You start to see more interesting ideas evolve from the market and from life as well. So it's not just the market thing, it's from life as well. And you'll be shocked at what you've been missing by going through that process. And that's what I found with the people that I've coached. And quite early on in one of my sessions, one guy even referred, even after some small discussions and some small work, said, I'm even seeing my ladders more clearly in front of me, the market depth and all the pricing. That is now clearer to me than what it was before. And I understand that the world that I was living in was kind of almost half offline. It was a stress world. I was disconnected. I was in that black and white world. But now I'm starting to manage myself very differently, like a performer. And I've woken up to the fact that it's a bit more interesting than I thought. And within that interest, in that color, that depth, there is opportunity. Yeah. And that's the way I sell me.
It's awesome. It's beautiful.
And it happens. It's the sizzle. That's sizzle. If you suddenly realize, Jesus, I've been living in a black and white world that's mono to HDMI, 27 million colors in Pro Dolby sound surround, you're going to notice a difference.
Absolutely.
Bringing both your responses to that together, something came up for me. It might sound a bit weird, but we're being creative, we're being playful, we're doing a bit of exploration here. Okay. It fell. What it conjured up for me was A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Beautiful. Where somehow you're showing the trader that goes to the trader past, that goes to the trader present, and that goes to the trader future if he doesn't change or she doesn't change. Sorry for the slip on the gender language there, but if they don't change, and really that's where I was when I had a coach. I didn't even know I needed to change. I was hanging on in my career as a trader, and the signs were there. I was looking at alternative careers, and doing a university. If I'd have signed up for a course, an evening course, doing an MBA, just because I thought I needed to add something extra to because this isn't going to last much longer. I'm really struggling. I've not fulfilled my potential. I've slipped backwards. That wasn't always down to trading ability. as much as the political context that I was in, the environment I was in, because it's not always about you, but we think it's about you. And you know, I didn't know where to go, and I didn't know that I needed. We always think we can do it ourselves.
Yeah, we do. Well, I think men do a little bit more than women, but we're also culturally been we've been taught it's okay to ask for help as women, but men have been taught it's not okay. Culturally, you've been taught asking for help is weakness. So until that cultural kind of lie is seen as misinformation, I think it's going to be hard for any men within themselves, never mind anybody finding out, for them by themselves in a quiet place where nobody hears them to ask anybody for help. It's just
the irony is where they are now is because they've had help all their life at various stages of their life. And yet they can't see them. They have help from teachers, from parents, from friends, from mentors, from businesses that they worked in, from the teams and colleagues around them. But they're only there because they've had help, not because they did it on their own. But somehow we think we did it on our own.
I know.
No, I didn't need anyone's help. It was crazy.
But that's the power of the inner critic. The inner critic lies to us all the time, and it tells us these stories that we are trying to hold up, even if those stories are not even the truth. And the idea that somebody ever did anything alone, is just such misinformation. But that, God forbid, you admit somebody did help you, then the inner critic tells you you're a pussy. And, and so there's just this constant circle that inner critic, inner gremlin just keeps you trapped in. And that's why most people feel trapped, even though they want to break out. It's the shame. That is the biggest source of people not changing, is they feel shame every time they move into the direction of change. So, if anybody listening here, you want change, you're going to have to come to face the fact that shame is completely brainwashing you from thinking change is going to, be as powerful as it's going to be for you. That's the key.
We will return to the podcast shortly. First, long-term listeners will know we have a partnership and collaboration with the Society of Technical Analysts, whereby listeners can obtain a discount on the price of their brilliant home study course, which is based off the diploma program which they deliver. We are also delighted to announce a new collaboration. This will be a groundbreaking high-performance trader learning program. This innovative program will concentrate on enhancing trader performance by developing traders' risk-taking abilities, risk processes, and risk capabilities, and providing a robust and comprehensive foundation for successful trading. This learning program is designed to benefit both professional and retail traders. This learning program will be conducted over 10 two-hour live Zoom sessions from March 2025 to June 2025. There will only be limited spots available on a first-come, first-served basis, so we do encourage early registration once registration opens. Further details of this will be shared in due course. If you are interested in getting advance notification of the details, please email us at info@alpha-mind.net and provide us with your name and email address, and we make sure that you will be added to the early notification queue. Now back to the podcast.
It's interesting that, of course, a coachee engaging with a coach is creating a partnership, of course, in that journey. And I think for someone from some trading background as such, there needs to be a certain level of acceptance that the person that's coaching them has been on that same journey, that knows what trauma is, that knows what the language is, that knows what the nuances are. There are various levels of pain, but there are various levels of elation, of course, in city roles, and that the coach, I think, has to sometimes just share their own stories as part of that. I guess it's a bit of a pitch in a way. It's a pitch of authenticity. Now, obviously Steve and I have got sort of 70 years of market experience, and of course that becomes, we talk about how do you sell it. You sell it from your own journey as well. You sell it from the fact that we've been there, done it, suffered it, benefited from it. But that story needs to be told as well for someone to get comfortable with joining you on this coaching journey. We know there's coaches out there that are coaching in a space that may not have been on been in a trading role or any kind, and so the language might not be there. They may not have a story to tell of their experience of, or what did trauma look like on non-farm payroll, whatever type of high spike volatility day occurred in their history. But I think that's really, really important. I think you have to bridge that as part of Steve's sizzle equation. The coach has to be right as well for the coachee.
Yeah.
Because if that relationship is like just just slotted in for convenience, then it won't go in the direction of intent.
It's a dance. And, there's plenty of times we've all danced with somebody who has a different rhythm than we have. So I advocate, and I will say that with prospects, I may not be the coach for you. I am not everybody's cup of tea, but be sure to find that rhythm before you hire that coach, because without it, it's not gonna feel as seamless.
That's really important. That point there. I said I was gonna come back to something earlier on. Not every coach is right for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's important to realize if you work with a coach and you didn't think it really moved the needle for you, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go to another coach. We have lots of people that will try one diet after another, then they'll finally find one that works for them, or a different gym workout, or something that gels with who they are. So, that point about the dances is really important. The coaching itself is a dance.
Yeah.
Okay, it becomes a partnership. The coach doesn't know the answer that the person needs. They don't know the solution to their problem. I spend a lot of time trying to find what exactly the problem is, which is part of the dance, because the problem that they present is rarely the problem.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that's part of it. But what was really interesting was the other thing I wanted to say was, and it goes back to the earlier point, there is not a culture of coaching in this world and in this industry. Mark asked why the corporate world took so long to catch on to coaching. And we mean executive coaching. And we know that most large companies now, they have teams of coaches, executive coaches. Both Mark and myself, we don't just do trader coaching. We work with leaders and managers in lots of businesses. It's the main area we do is with traders and portfolio managers. But it's not it's not exclusive in those areas, but it's much more accepted in corporate. They come to you, they look for you, they reach out to you much more, whereas we know from our work, and we've got a couple of great clients that are really into coaching, that company wide it's a big thing for them, but they are outliers, they are exceptions, because it's just not part of the culture of this industry. It's so alien to it. And what I mean by that is that even when I had coaching in the year 2000, even when I saw what it did for me, okay, and I was just talking about this with you the other day, Mark, I said, my performance just took off into a different trajectory, okay? And yet it didn't occur to me once, not once, to go back and have more coaching. I look back on it now and I think, if that's what it did for me then, what else could it have done for me?
Exactly.
It could have taken me to an even higher level. Why didn't I just think, just call him back? It didn't even occur because it's not part of the culture of this industry.
Exactly.
Industry that we think we can do it ourselves. As I go back to that thing, we think we just need a bit more analysis, a new analysis technique, a new method or system, a new piece of research, the best news. No, those are not needle movers. everyone else is getting those at the same time. We're just repeating the same thing again, and nothing is changing.
I think we just all seek comfort. And, coaching and the idea of coaching is going to bring up for some resistance, because there is some discomfort involved, just like going to the gym, just like, paying attention to your food. You're doing something different. And I think for most people, like a cruise ship can't turn on a dime. People don't like to turn on a dime. They don't feel comfortable turning on a dime. So it's like, okay, we have a tendency to seek that which is familiar, right? The devil we know is much better than the devil we don't know. And I think it's just, how do we get people to realize, oh, okay, this is available to me when I am ready for my cruise ship to move in a different direction.
But also company levels, you have it in the corporate world, right? Even when this coaching program ended that I was on all those years ago, okay, and a couple of years later, I was out with a very good friend, okay. He was the head of trading at Credit Suisse in London, okay, and we were out one evening, and he turned around to me and he said, Steve, one of our colleagues, I used to work at Credit Suisse, so, a former colleague of mine, good friend of his, trader, was really struggling. He'd been very successful for many years, but he'd gone off the boil. His performance was suffering. Something wasn't right. He's under pressure as the head of trading from above him to terminate this individual. And he said, look, A, I don't want to terminate him. He's a friend. Okay. B, I know he's a good trader. I know he can bring a lot of value. He's brought a lot of value in the past. If I could get him back to that, he'll bring a lot of value. And he's good for the team as well. So I don't want to lose him. But I'm running into so much, so many obstacles. I don't know how to change him. Okay. And I said, look, I worked with this great coach a couple of years ago. I think he might be able to help you. Okay. So he took the name, he phoned him up. He said, yeah, I think we could do something. You need to get HR to approve it and everything. He called up HR and they said, yeah, we work with this coach already in the company, but he doesn't work with the traders. He's an executive coach with the leadership. He went, I think it would be great for this guy. And I went, no, we don't use coaching. And he said to them, if you don't use it, I'm going to pay out of my own pocket. And HR got scared then.
Good.
Right? And they gave him permission for one program with him. And he completely turned this guy around. And the next year, he made multiple seven figures for the firm on one small investment in coaching.
That's it. The ICF, the International Coaches Federation, with their, different studies, this is an old study, but they found it was an over 700% return on investing in coaching.
Just jumping in here to say, if you would like to know more details about that study, we have included a link to it in the notes for this episode. You can find it on coachingfocus.com. Or just Google Coaching Focus Group, Coaching ROI. Here's the hard evidence you need to get buy-in. And just for a little bit more detail, the report itself said that in almost 1/5, 19% of cases, the return on IO, the return on investment. And just to add a little bit more colour to that, the report said that in almost 1/5, around 19% of the cases, the return on investment indicated was at least 50 times or 5,000% the initial investment, and the median company return being 700% or 7 times the initial investment. Now let's return to the podcast. That particular return, and you just think about more, you had to get rid of him, get somebody else in, or the cost of that would have involved. Okay, 700% was chump change. That was thousands of percent the return on that coaching. Okay, but it never became any more than that. It never became them going, well, we need to bring this into the business and put
It's crazy. They should have taken that coach and put them in front of all their traders, because it would have been more revenue for them. That's what's so cool.
I know Mark's had stories like this where he's made that difference. I've made that difference where I've seen, numbers in the tens of millions from working with a guy in a hedge fund and the transitional change that's had to him on them. But there is still no connection to maybe we should do this. It's just not part of the culture. This is where I'm going. I can understand why it's not, because I was thinking like that myself at the time. So how do we get this into the culture of finance?
We talk to them about ROI. That's the language they live with. So
they don't get it, do they? They don't get it. That doesn't sizzle.
Yeah, it's true. ROI, it only sizzles when there are bonuses attached to it.
Yeah, it's if it's something they said, if we invest in this, what's the ROI? Yeah, they've already decided to invest in it. They just need to prove it.
Yeah,
that's why they have to get that. But they haven't decided to invest in this. They don't think, wow, we bring this in throughout the organization. This, even if, it works with 20% of the team on a, in a physical way, and the others, they find it, you only need it to work with one in probably 5, 1 in 10.
So true.
Don't you have to keep on repeating to them 700% return?
Yeah,
why am I doing it? 700% return. That's the only number you need to know. Why should I be doing 700% return? Here's the data.
Much bigger than that, though, in trading.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, that's your starting point. But if you were to ask them out in the market, if you could do a trade where there was a 700% turn, would you turn it down? Because that's what you're now doing with this service.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a trade, right? These decisions are trades. That's the best trade you're ever going to do for your stuff. 700% return minimum.
I think there's just this, sort of, it's again that disconnect that somehow coaching is this, as if they're all rational already. I think there's a misnomer, especially among traders and even executives, that there is this sense of cognitive, I'm so smart, so I would know if I was in my own way, so to speak. And that is the ultimate misinformation, that sense of that you'll be able to see yourself objectively. And until, we both know that C-suite executives and traders, they usually are the smartest guys everywhere they go. But this is the one place where they aren't going to be able to see themselves accurately, that they are able to just do it themselves. They have done so much probably in a lot of ways due to their grit. But then this is sort of that crossing the Rubicon of potentially putting themselves in that vulnerable state that threatens that sense of identity that they have for themselves. I work with C-suite executives as well, and you can see that they, at the top of the food chain, they clawed their way there, and then they're afraid if they get any sort of help, it'll somehow threaten the image they have of themselves or their colleagues' image of themselves.
Wow. On that, do you think some are scared, though, of making somebody else better than them?
Definitely, but only the ones who are fundamentally insecure with themselves,
exactly.
Right? There are narcissists, of course, but narcissists, I have found, never come into coaching because they never see themselves as the cause in the matter.
Mm-hmm.
So people say, what do you do with narcissists? I'm like, I never get them because they don't see themselves as cause in the matter. So they don't come to coaching.
No, you'll never get a narcissist come to coaching ever. And, I think that's, we're told that even as a coach, you can't coach a narcissist anyway.
Yeah, exactly. They would never come.
A, they would never come. B, you could never change them.
Oh, definitely not. But there are those who come across narcissistic that aren't really narcissistic. It's just a big front. It's a big front, and putting on kind of this presentation that ultimately is on sand. That house has been built on sand because they don't have that true sense of themselves. And that is also, unfortunately, a lot of what happens to traders. Their confidence has been built on something that is externally validating them, usually their P&L. And that is what they base their value in proportion to. And part of what I hope coaching does for them is it opens them up to find ways to have an internal validation that allows them to be more neutral when it comes to their P&L or their bonuses, or if they're in a company, how they're promoted.
I've actually never seen a successful trader who I would deem as a narcissist. So it is quite interesting. To succeed at this job, you need to be self-aware, you need to be humble, you need to be willing to be vulnerable and flaunt your vulnerability in the face of the market. And if you can't do that, you're never going to succeed at it. I've seen people make out they're succeeding at trading, but they're not. I've seen them in hedge funds, and they're the ones that just keep going around and turn up at the 5th, 6th and 7th hedge fund,
Totally.
who just played the gamble. They play that game, but they're never going to achieve anything beyond random luck.
For sure.
It's one of those ironies.
One of my favorite scenes from a movie that I will say to executives and traders alike is when Luke Skywalker is in the swamp with Yoda. And there's a part, Luke is a very successful pilot at this point. We get to know that he's, very good at what he does, but he has to, of course, go to the next level. And there's a part where Yoda says to him, something about being, fear. And Luke says, I'm not afraid, with so much young, youthful hubris. I'm not afraid. And Yoda looks at him and he's like, you will be. You will be. And that is what I say to, traders, executives, like there is going to come that time where you are absolutely scared to death. Are you going to have what you need, the tools, right? The tools to be able to surf through that absolute terror, or are you going to crumble? And if you have any doubt that you won't have those tools, well, damn well get them now before that inevitability shows up.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been a great chat. I'm mindful we've been going on for quite a time. Anything you want to add, Mark?
I think you're quite right, Kim-Ann, in emphasising being well armed for the battles ahead. And well armed and well defended as well. I mean, don't just think about armory to attack, but think about how you're going to defend yourself from low level stress, acute stress, of disappointment. But you can get chronic stress. It can turn into traumatic stress. That can become depression and recurrent depression and all sorts of things down the line. Our chemical nature sort of triggers us into these events. And so being aware of yourself on that journey and having the tools to be comfortable on that journey of walking towards complexity and being comfortable walking towards something that's going to be difficult is kind of what comfort in markets is all about. And if you can be comfortable with that, then I think the chances are you're going to perform better. You're certainly going to survive the journey with a greater chance of survival and actually probably enjoy the journey. There's stress is difficult, but we know that markets there's an enjoyable aspect to markets too, and that perhaps it gives you a chance to enjoy it if you've got the right tools. And of course, it comes from people like ourselves engaging with people.
The discovery, the adventure, the challenge, the accomplishment, those are all incredible highs, and they're healthy highs. Anything we have to work hard for and that we achieve feels amazing chemically as well as emotionally, and give yourself the tools and the patterns so that you can enjoy all of that and not get yourself kind of beaten up by the market. See it as your Yoda, see it as your school of enlightenment, see it as a place that's going to make you become the best version of yourself.
Brilliant. And Kim-Ann, just before we finish, where can listeners find out more about you? And we'll put these notes, of course, in the show notes as well. But, and maybe you could just talk quickly. You've sent some stuff over about the work of John Coates. We all know about his stuff, which is brilliant. The Hour Between Dog and Wolf, which is a book we recommend to everyone to read, to understand more about yourself from I suppose you could say, a biological, neurochemical perspective. But you're doing some work with a healthcare company as well in this, and as well as your own coaching work.
I've wanted to have lab work since I read Coates' book 12 years ago, and I'm excited to have a relationship with a diagnostic lab that is doing this blood workup because it is so important, I feel, especially for traders, but for anyone, to get clear on what those levels are, because a lot of times those levels are askew, and they do impact how you're able to, handle a bear market, how you handle a bull market. You're going to have a whole bunch of hormones that are either helping you as a trader or harming you as a trader. So I'm just excited to finally have that to offer people, because I know it's such a big part of what they are up against is a chemical game as well as a mental game. But everybody can find me at thewallstreetcoach.com. And then my social media platforms are my name, Kim-Ann Curtin. And Curtin is spelled without an X, Curtin.
Okay. Fantastic. And I'm going to leave you with the last soundbite, Stephen.
Me?
Minimum 700% return. That's all I'm going to say, right? Minimum 700. You engage with people like us, minimum 700% return on your investment. I mean, we look forward to everyone contacting all of us, because, it's important.
Our phone should ring off the hook now, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, I mean, you can see why it's multiples of that, especially if you're working in the corporate world and you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars in capital.
Exactly. It's common sense. Sense.
Most hedge fund managers are running somewhere like $200 to $250 million of capital.
Exactly.
Okay?
Think about that.
1% on average per year. What does that make? That's a little bit more than 700% return on the investment mark.
I said minimum. I said minimum. It's a no-brainer, right? To us, it's a no-brainer. But if you're interested in, it comes from the top in some way, though, doesn't it? From a cultural perspective, you need to be interested in investing in your people.
Oh, completely.
Okay, so if you're bothered to invest in your people, then this is not a significant investment for such a huge potential return.
Yeah,
correct.
But
that's a whole nother conversation, right? We are not seeing companies invest in their people. And this is, in my book, I interviewed Professor Lynn Stout, who talked about this constant focus on returns mentality, that was not done prior to the past 30 years. And that mistake happened, unfortunately, because Milton Friedman made a mistake. He misread the corporate law. A company is not run legally needing to be run just for their shareholders. That was a misinterpretation, because he was not an attorney. He was an economist. And because of that, meant it's still being taught in schools, even though now we know that is not. Companies used to last, on average, their lifespan was 80 years. Now companies last 8 years, if we're lucky. Business is going extinct. And part of that is because this mentality of showing returns has completely overshadowed the corporate leadership to thinking they just have to make the money instead of looking at the long-term effects of like, wow, let's invest in our people. That probably will help our business, our customers, and our revenue for the long term. But they're not thinking like that. There's such short-termism.
Not just invest in our people. Let's invest in our ecosystem.
Correct.
Let's invest in all the people and how they integrate and meet and talk and partner and share internally.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
what. That is powerful.
Never mind the community we're in the middle of. Maybe we should be in tune to that community. Maybe we should be in tune to the larger group of the country we're in, to the planet. Like what's his name? The gentleman who ran was it Interface? He was not concerned about the environment. He did module carpeting, and he was the night before preparing for a talk about the environment, which he admits he gave not a damn about. And he read The Ecology of Commerce, and he said that night he got a spear in the chest, and he realized, oh my gosh, my company is contributing to this demise of the environment. I'm going to commit to a zero footprint in this year 2010, and this was years from him. And Interface, he became that. His company now is that kind of a company. So it can shift quickly if people see themselves perhaps as cause in the matter.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Kim-Ann, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for joining. I was your guest a while ago. It's great to have you back as our guest. It's been really refreshing, actually. We've talked about what we do, which bizarrely we never do.
So true. It was so good to talk to both of you, and thank you for inviting me in the first place.
Thank you for listening today. We do hope you enjoyed this rather different subject, and hopefully that stirs some thinking for you. Again, thank you to our podcast partner, the Society of Technical Analysts. Do check out the offer with regard to their brilliant home study course. If you are interested in understanding more about yourself as a trader, do check out my new book, Mastering the Mental Game of Trading. In the meantime, we wish you the very best of luck, and look forward to you joining future episodes of the AlphaMind Podcast. Goodbye.